Hello and welcome to Season 3 of the Push podcast. My name is Jack Ferguson, an experienced marketing and sales consultant with a science background, and I'm your host. This season of the podcast is essential listening for small and medium-sized companies looking for their next stage of growth. Myself and other experts will explore common problems in marketing, product, and sales. We will deconstruct them and then detail straightforward, evidence-based remedies for you. I aim to give you both inspiration and practical solutions to push through similar challenges in your own company. Thanks for being here, and don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. Hello and welcome to the third episode of this season. Today we are continuing the journey of AppCrafter Studios, who are a fictional B2B app development company. They do $15 million in revenue but have been stuck at this number for 2 years now. They had issues with branding, which we covered in episode 1 of this season. But now their sales and marketing team have come to CEO Sarah and said that they don't actually know why their results have been so poor. Would this ever happen in reality? No. No team would ever come to a CEO and say this. But I've set up this scenario so anybody who wants to know how to think about their marketing and sales teams and their marketing and sales functions from the ground up can. If you're a GM or CEO who is having issues with marketing and sales, or more likely marketing and sales, this is the perfect episode for you because we discuss the fundamentals of how these teams should work together. What are the foundational pieces to these functions? And what are realistic expectations for these functions? Some of the specifics this episode will cover include why it's so important to understand how your category behaves and buys, why sales is an outcome and not a person or a team, why marketing is an intangible game and why that matters, why you should focus on a buying process and not a selling process, and how to intercept a prospect just before they come into market, which is often a great time to get in front of them. To talk this through, I am joined again by growth and product marketing specialist Alex Urquhart. If you'd like to find myself or Alex online, you can find the links to our social media pages and websites in this episode's description, whatever platform you are listening on. For now, let's bring in Alex. Well, welcome back, Alex, to another episode of the podcast. How are you doing?
Good, mate. Thanks to be back. Keen to get right back into Writer and AppCrafter Studios.
Yes, I look forward to talking a bit more about these companies too. We discussed AppCrafter Studios on episode 1 of this season, Season 3, and we helped them out with a few things last time, but I understand they've got some other problems that they want us to look at in this episode. Do you want to let us know what they are?
Yeah, let's do it. So a quick recap. So we've got Sarah Thompson. So is the CEO of AppCrafter Studios, an app development company. There's three in the marketing team, 3 in the sales team. They do 15 million revenue per year. 9 million of that is recurring revenue. 6 million is new business. The new business churns as fast as they can acquire. The one big issue is that they haven't grown and aren't growing for the last 2 years. On the first episode, we dealt with the fact that the marketing team wanted to just focus on brand, while the sales team didn't appreciate that and didn't believe it led to any leads. If you want to listen to the first episode, I suggest going back to Season 3, Episode 1, but for now, we'll jump straight into it. So now the issue is that sales and marketing team admit that they don't actually know why the results are so poor and why the brand isn't growing. What should they do?
I'm so happy that they admitted this and made my job so much easier. I think this would absolutely never happen in real life, ever, once, ever. But it would be nice if it did because it gives you the floor to actually, make some changes and make some things work. So, all right, sales team, marketing team, and Sarah, let's talk about what you should do. We're kind of starting from scratch, even though the company's got 50 employees. What should we do now if they don't know what to do? So what I'd start off with is that the sales and marketing team, they need to work together and foster what I'd say is a culture of understanding about how buyers buy in their category, how their category behaves. I want them to obsess about the buying process and I want them to work together on that. And as we know, in sales and marketing teams, they don't always get along. They often don't get along. They don't work together. I want them working together, and I want them thinking long and hard about how the category behaves and how buyers buy. So I'll quote a few stats here quickly just to set the scene, which is that I spoke about the B2B LinkedIn Institute in the first episode of the season, but Harvard Business Review, Ehrenberg Bass Institute, there's a range of other studies that in B2B, they all estimate that at any given time, 95% of buyers in a category are out of market at a particular point. So 5% of buyers are in market. Now, this is important for the sales and marketing teams to know. You need to work backwards from there. You can't go, 80% of the buyers are in market. No, they're not. Mm-hmm. They're not. They're not going to buy now. I'm sorry. They're just not. So it gets scarier for B2B because when a buyer does come into market, 80 to 90% of the time, in a lot of these studies, they show they go with a supplier they already know. So most buyers are out of market, and even when they come into market, most of the time they go with someone they already knew or know before they come into market. So if we think about that, we think, okay, most of them are out of market. Of the customers that are in market, they typically go with someone they already know. And that also means that there's not necessarily any indicators that they are in market. So if we looked at search intent, for example, that is the dregs. That's the last of the last that haven't worked out their supplier and are Googling suppliers. That's very rare. Like most people aren't in market. Of those who are in market, they're not doing that. They already know who they're going with, right? So let's start there. That's how the category probably behaves. And this is law-like, these 95%, 5% rules, like law-like to the extent that it's replicable across a range of categories. It's kind of scary how common it is for it to operate almost like this.
So consistently.
Yeah. And I don't say that lightly, but yeah, consider it law-like. You're not going to have just randomly 50% of buyers in market in the category unless there's an event like COVID. Massive event. So let's start there. Let's start, how does a category buy? How do they behave? And sometimes it's just about asking better questions because, people within the team are probably smart, but if you pitch the case that here's how the category is probably buying, here's how the category is probably behaving, or almost definitely behaving, it changes everything, right? You start thinking through that lens now. So I present information like this to clients or to teams. I can see the light bulbs going off left, right, and center. It's just where you need to start because you're not going to change that. And I'm sure you've come across a few people here and there who kind of want this not to be the reality, and they want to compete for in-market clients, right? And you can. I'm not saying you can't. But you've got to know what you're dealing with then. You're probably going to be getting compared to a whole lot more suppliers if they didn't come into market knowing who they were already going to go with.
Correct.
You've probably been on calls, right, as well, where you're getting compared. You know they're shopping around.
100%.
Yeah, so I like starting with good questions, and sometimes that's what this type of research does, understanding the category. It gives you good questions to ask. And mapping out the buying process and understanding buyers. Sometimes clients will get a bit confused about why I'm doing it. And part of the answer is that it helps you ask good questions. It's better to say, how do we reach out of market buyers and be one of the suppliers considered when they do come into market? It's a better question than how do we get our our Google ads converting better? Because a lot's already happened by that point when someone's at that stage. So AppCrafter Studios, that's one question I'd encourage you to ask is how do you reach out to market buyers? Ideally, maybe a year, 6 months before they come into market. That might be hard to control it to that extent. But I'd also mention too, to be able to ask good questions is April Durnford, a positioning consultant, states that 40 to 60% of B2B tech purchases, people who enter the buying process, end in no decision. So a large proportion of the time it ends in sticking with the incumbent or the status quo. You are competing against the status quo as well. So what does that give you as a sales and marketing team? You can ask questions like, do we know the warning signs for that? Do we think we're at risk of this being a no decision? Are those signs here? Are we in a position to first sell the person we're speaking to on why they should actually champion this? Because one of the problems is that in B2B purchasing, a huge percentage of the time, someone will first and foremost make a decision to not get fired. That's their first priority. And that's bad for companies like AppCrafter Studios who aren't as well known or who aren't as big, because if it does go wrong, if it does go badly, the person in the company who made the decision or contributed to the decision can't turn around and go, well, it's IBM, it's McKinsey, it's Bain. No, wouldn't you do the same thing?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's one thing you have to consider is how do you sell this person themselves on pushing this through the organization.
I agree. I was going to say it's even there's a book called The Jolt, I think it's called, and they talk a bit about this. And it's the current markets are no longer focusing on do they see enough value? It's like people, as you said, push the value, push the ad, push the, and they're more driven by which is the least risk option. Or it's like so your sales process as a sort of sideline should be more focused on how do you make them more comfortable and reduce risk, because just pumping them full of value just scares them way more and just makes it way way worse.
And it's not alleviating the fear really that they have. Yeah, it's actually you've got to present risk-adjusted value, not product or service value. Well, you do as well, but
you got to have both.
Yeah, you got to have both, and you got to understand that how good your thing will be compared to how risky it is to go with you.
100%.
So one thing you can do in these situations, though, is you can try and get other stakeholders from the client's company or the prospect's company involved earlier on. That's one thing. If you're just talking to one person in the company and it feels like, their heart's not really in it, you want to try and get other people involved as soon as possible, right? So that's one thing you can do. There is a situation that I wanted to talk about where it was very public in Australia. 2016, the Australian government gave the job of the 2016 census to IBM. And IBM fucked it up. Famously fucked it up. And the website went down for about 40 hours. 40 hours. But you do look at something like that and you go, well, that decision was probably made so the person in the government or the people in the government can say, well, it was IBM,
Yeah. I made the right decision.
Yeah.
You can't. They've got a high enough liability insurance that we can probably sue them. So worst case,
And the optics though as well. Like we can sell that in to people that we went with a big company, we didn't go with some no-name provider. But, and that's what a smaller company has to consider, because they would probably do a better job, no doubt. From memory, someone or a group of guys and programmers actually whipped up the census then on a weekend and go, here's how it's done. A couple of days. Like this is, a large bureaucratic company is... I don't think this is that surprising that it went this way, But
that'll be 500 million, please.
Yeah, exactly. But these companies, these brand names, its brand can be used to be blamed. Bain, McKinsey, the board get cranky with you. Well, Bain told us to do it. McKinsey told us to do it, right? We've got to think about the value that these brands actually are bringing, these consulting companies or service providers. It's a little bit more complicated than we make apps, It's a bit more to be considered. So all that's relevant to the buying process and how the category behaves. And I would encourage Sarah, the CEO, to obsess about that. I would encourage the team to obsess about that. And I would really want the sales team to think of themselves as category researchers and not just salespeople. And I think I've heard you say it before, actually, that when you are interacting with a prospect, there's two things you want. Ideally, you're moving them closer to a sale or you're getting data. And this is kind of what I mean here. Like they want to get that data out of them and bring that back to the wider team. So Bruce for AppCrafter Studios is the senior sales manager. I want him bringing back insights from the market, like when he hears our CTO got spooked that the budget's going to blow out like it did with the last supplier. Our COO thinks it's going to be too operationally difficult to implement. Our CEO doesn't see this as a viable revenue stream anymore. And I want this information flowing back to the wider team all the time. That's what I'd ask from sales. You do have outliers. Not every situation is the same, but you will see patterns. They will bring back things time and time again that if the whole team is focused on, you will solve it. But you need the info. You need to be asking the right questions. You need to be knowing why their decisions are happening the way they are.
was going to say, what's your thoughts on giving the sales team those, not prompting questions, but maybe at the end saying, hey, can I quickly ask you these three, what's your biggest problem? What are you trying to get to? Is there any reason why you wouldn't go with us? Or do you think it's good giving them prompting questions to give the sales team? Or do you think just let them dig for the data themselves and keen to hear what they think?
So Sarah giving them the questions?
Yeah, sort of setting with the sales team, say, moving forward, I want to know these 3 points where possible.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's, you'd be saying if we get stuck, or if the sale falls through, why? Obviously, why it did go ahead as well is handy to know. But what happened? And sometimes it's because you just aren't right for them. Like you're never going to be able to serve them well, and that's okay. And you've got to wear that sometimes. But other times, you could have done something better.
Yep.
So
Just heartbreaking.
You want that insight. And the other challenging thing with this can be is that if you've got a really blame-heavy culture. It's hard to get people to do this because they have to admit, what happened. I'm a bit of an idealist. I never punish honesty, I never punish that ever. But it is challenging, and I understand that people don't always want to expose a mistake. But it's not really a mistake. You're just all learning together. That's what I see. So again, sales is an outcome. Sales is an outcome. I said that on the previous episode. I'll say it again. I'll say it next episode. Listeners, get ready for me to keep saying that. And you need to keep looking at this like you're getting information in and making yourself better for next time.
Yep.
So when the CTO gets spooked by the budget blowing out, how are you going to tackle that?
How do you combat it? Yep.
Exactly. So, there could be all sorts of things happening, maybe too many middle managers speaking to you and not enough CTOs. How do you get the CTO into the conversation earlier? How can you get to the CTO directly? Not easy to do, as we know, but a good question to ask. So that's what I'd say about a bit of that.
And I was going to say, on that, sales is an outcome. 1,000% agree with that. But maybe could you unpack that a little bit more? Because I think some people might be like, what do you mean by that? It's an outcome. Yeah.
Okay.
Keen to hear your thoughts.
So sales, I would say, a sale is when someone makes a purchase. And in B2B, especially for AppCrafter Studios, there was a process someone went through to choose you. That's a very tangible end point. We made a sale. They gave us money. But we talked about brand in the first episode of this season where that can take ages. Someone can know about your brand for years before they buy from you. That can take a long time to build. And for someone to then come in and to go, hey, I made the sale.
It's like, did you?
You took them through the last step or the last few steps. And sometimes a salesperson will make a client or a prospect aware of the company, and then they will take them all the way through. But there's still, the prospect probably asks around, asks about how other people went when they worked with you. They probably look at your website. They'll do other shit. It's not just this one guy in this room or this one girl who's
so convincing that they decide to say yes right then and there. Yeah, I agree.
And it's just, it all counts to an extent. So that's what I mean by sales as an outcome. And that's where the challenge is with a sales team, because the description of it indicates that they do everything, to make the sale.
It starts and ends with them.
Yeah, inherently in the name of the team. They're a salesperson. They're a sales team. And it's not that it doesn't happen where they do a lot of the work. I'm not saying that doesn't happen.
Absolutely.
So
there was going to say there was it's an old corny sales metaphor thing, but they say you can't sell to anyone, they'll choose to buy. And, it's like you've got to help them buy. And on top of that, this is an analogy I use. I'm a bit of a Cowboy supporter. So there was in 2015 their sporting team, their winger Ash Graham. People said he wasn't the best, but he was the highest scoring winger in the league for that whole year. And and then he got put on this like Hall of Fame. He's fantastic. But the only reason is because he was given the ball right in front of the line and he just put it down 65 times. Yeah. And I feel it's the same analogy. I was like, there is 74 things that happened prior to him putting that ball down.
That's good.
But because he's the winger, everyone goes, oh, well, and I try to say to these founders and company leaders to say, well, it's like to me saying, if I owned a football team, you're the coach, and you said, wingers score tries, hire me a good winger, I need to win a premiership, score more tries, please. It's like, well, there's 70 other thousand things behind him that are happening in order for that to happen. So I thought I'd interject there because that's something I rant about a lot, and I get frustrated when the expectations of salespeople are astronomically too high. Yeah. And I'll be honest, if someone come into your business and make multiple millions of dollars, they're not going to do it for you. They're going to do it for themselves.
That's true.
Yeah. So,
that's true. And that's an amazing analogy because the winger finishes. So we're talking about rugby league here, I assume. But it doesn't matter what sport really. But it's a good point. Like
one
it
position.
could be a goal kicker in whatever. But they do, they do the last part well.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. And if they still have to play their role, absolutely.
Yep.
But if you expect someone to single-handedly run the whole field or whatever sport you want to use and score the points and win the premiership, it's like, well, that person better be on a lot of money because they're doing all the work.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. And that's the expectations is, they do more than what they really do. Again, I say this all the time. I don't know if I said it last episode, but I'm going to say it. We play an intangible game for the most part, right? What we do is we help people go through a process where they buy at the end. That's what we're trying to do. And I call it a buying process versus a selling process too for a very specific reason, because the buying process is focused on the buyer and what they're thinking and what they care about, and then you mold the selling process to that. But you can't see everything. Asking questions of your prospects and of your customers is a way to get the intangibles out of their head and into your hands. That's why you do it. It's not available anywhere else. That's where it's sitting in the collective consciousness. That's what I'd say to that. But
awesome. That was good. That's a really important point, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I love that sport analogy. That's that's good. Yeah. So what could be happening here? What questions could they be asking to get in front of people when they're out of market? Like, what events AppCrafter Studios start occurring that indicate that someone may be in market soon? So if you know these events, there might be continuous bill shock with a current provider. So that may take typically 6 to 12 months to then pull the pin and go with someone else. How do you get in front of someone when they start having bill shock? How do you meet them there? Like, that's a good question for the team, both teams to ask. Not one, not the other, everyone working together in my idealistic world. And I think Sarah will be surprised how smart people can be when they ask good questions and how many answers people will come up with. I see it all the time, you know, and maybe because we're external, a lot of the time we come in and we do things that people in the day-to-day it's not...
They don't see it.
Yeah, it's a different perspective. So you ask these things that people haven't been asked before. And that's no shade against the internal people. It's just a different...
You're so close to the problem, you don't really see it.
Exactly, you're so close to it. But that's what I'd say. And in this team of 6, if you get them together and asked, how can we meet our prospects when they get bill shock? What should we do? What should we say? Where should we say it? How should we say it? Sarah, you'll be surprised at how good some of these answers are, how good people are at actually, how much they know as well. Like, sometimes people can get underestimated in a company and use maybe 10% of their knowledge.
Agreed. I think salespeople are because they're obviously not regarded as that go-to knowledge base. But I agree. I think they have, hopefully on a daily basis, conversations with the market. And the goal is here, you need to understand the buyer, who understands more than the person talking to them every day. And if you can understand why they're saying no, then you can figure out what they need to hear to say yes. So 100% agree.
Yeah, cool. All right. So my radical idea, Sarah, bring the two teams together. One growth team, not a sales and marketing team. One growth team. I want you to tell them that they help buyers buy. That's it. That's what they do. You 6 people, that's what you do. And
they're all accountable.
Yeah. And it's just indescribably more effective to do it together, to do it that way. We may have spoke about in the first episode as well about that scary stat again from the B2B LinkedIn Institute that cited that marketing and sales teams overlap on reach 16% of the time on average. 16% of the time their reach. So who they're going after overlap 16% of the time. Now, it should be that the sales team are just targeting people within what marketing, or the comms and advertising is getting in front of.
So the indirect selling to, 84%? And then...
Yeah. well, the 84%, they've got no chance of really knowing who you are because they're not getting targeted by the marketing team.
Yeah. You're going to call the sales guy and the other guy just getting an ad or whatever it is. So.
And that's a huge study too. That's 7,046 companies, 5 verticals, 4 regions. It was huge. So I would say, being aligned, these teams, ideally one team, but if they can align, there's a massive competitive advantage to be had. Buyers will judge the brand as one brand. I swear I'm going to say this every episode, but I'm saying it again. You may as well target the same people.
Talk to the same person is a pretty fundamental core part to all this. Yeah.
But the market's going to say, hey, AppCrafter Studios, are they any good? Think about how they talk about it casually with their peers. They're not going to say, oh, their sales team are really nice, but their ads are really boring. Like no one breaks it down like that. It's just a brand. One brand, AppCrafter Studios, and they probably have maybe 3 thoughts about it because no one cares about us.
Yeah, they're a good price and they did a good job.
Yes.
Probably as far as I'll go.
As far as, So I would say that aligning the team is critical. Obsess about how the category buys. The other thing is I would add is I go this far. I get the sales team in the same room as the agency. So AppCrafter Studios are using a creative agency. I bring the sales teams into that as well because I'm trying to foster this culture of just one team. And every time I've done that, I was thinking about this before this episode, but every time I've done that, the creative agency and the salespeople or the advertising agency, whatever they are, they've always got so much to ask each other. It's really incredible to see. But it's just facilitating this transfer of information, which sounds so basic, across everyone who's working on this, And if you're all together, working on it together, it is incredible what can happen.
I agree. I think also to the culture behind that, when everyone's stressed, I feel sometimes when the marketing and sales team get together, it's that argument of marketing's done more research, but the sales teams had more conversations and they say, well, I know I'm better than you. I know I'm better. And it's back and forth. And it's like, you need to make this bit of content for me. It's like, hang on, well, I think we need to make this. And I completely agree. Getting them together and then saying, we're not selling, so you're not responsible. It's a team and we need to get that cohesion because as soon as they start butting heads, everything will take 5 times, 6 times longer to do and way more work. So completely agree.
Yeah, they stop talking, and it's the market doesn't care about your internal fights.
They just want the same experience and quality for their money. That's it.
Exactly. So it can be difficult for a CEO, so Sarah, or maybe a business owner or something like this. I have seen examples where when you start bringing everyone together, even the external agencies, I get that it can be a bit confronting for the owner or the CEO. It's like they feel like they're losing control a bit sometimes, like that they're not the conduit across all this anymore. And I kind of get that fear. So that is something to consider. But I still feel it is far superior to get that information transfer happening accurately, efficiently, and effectively. And as the leader, you kind of have to suck it up a bit and go, there's going to be a lot of ideas. I'm not the middle person anymore. I kind of get that. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it also adds... it shows them problems they didn't know existed, which I think is kind of like out of sight, out of mind. Like I think sometimes they open up there and they go, I'm going to have to do this, then we're going to have to work on this, and they get back to the same point. We got triple the budget next month. Just sell. Just do something. And it's always driven from the top down. As much as it's very easy to pick on the CEOs and people above, everything, the culture, everything is from the top down. So it all, if you don't set the tone, you don't slow down, you stop the blame, and I agree, and you sort of set the conditions and say, well, this is what we're going to do. It's no one's fault. Here's the direction we're going to go in. It has to be set from the top down. And don't be afraid to find out. You're better off knowing where the problems are and not doing something about it than continuing on doing something wrong and keep failing. As you said, it's like stalled for 2 years. So you're going to have to look yourself in the mirror one day. It's going to have to pop up eventually.
No, I agree. I agree. And it does go from the top down. I agree with that too. But I mean, companies obviously survive with sales and marketing teams hating each other. I think that's probably because it's the status quo and because you're not doing about it. Everyone's doing it. So if they're all not really being effective, then
I think there's always that tension. I think it's ever going to be perfect. You can't wait till it's be perfect. I agree with that. If you're going to wait till perfect, you can't do that. But I think in certain areas like that, the more I dive into it, I think the demand, which is a whole nother episode in itself, but if the demand's high and you got a disjointed sales marketing team, if you got people that want what you got, it's pretty hard not to go well. So I think when you don't have the demand and you need the team to work together, that gets hard. That gets and because it's very easy to blame people, right? The results aren't coming through the door. It's branding, it's as you said, or content, or it's sales or leads or whoever it is. So I agree.
Yeah. I would say in that case, though, that these teams should be bringing that information back. No one wants the product.
No,
you know.
that's right. And why?
Yeah, exactly. So,
and don't be afraid to ask them to their face. I'm very blunt with people, and I'll be like, hey, listen, this doesn't feel that it's right. That's more than okay. I'm not going to push you. Keen to hear the warts and all. Like, what's wrong with it?
Yeah.
Too high. You've already got one. Tell me. And people are honest. If you're open and genuine about it, they'll say like, yeah, listen, it's not really important, right? Like you're selling something I don't really care about. So it's great. Okay. If everyone thinks that, then maybe we're in the wrong business.
Yeah. I think someone does need to lead the teams though. So maybe Sarah is going to keep doing that, or is she doing it? She could bring them together, Sarah, if you're going to do that. Maybe Bruce, the senior sales manager, could manage both teams. Emma, who's the brand specialist, which in the other episode we discussed how much brand work needs to be done. Perhaps she could be managing them, but I'd be getting them together regularly, maybe every fortnight. Focus on the buying process, focus on the category, share information widely and easily across the two teams. And this company's small enough that they can recycle insights back in and iterate quickly. Use that as a competitive advantage.
50 is still small. It's very small.
Yeah. And 6 is small. It's just 6 people. So use that as your competitive advantage over the big guys. Use that as a competitive advantage over all the other sales and marketing teams who refuse to get along. This is what I'd say. I hope that helps Sarah. Sales and marketing alignment's difficult, yes. I think for AppCrafter Studios, I think you could do it. I don't think you're too far gone at this point. You don't have different reporting lines, and you don't have incentive structures in place that are going to prevent this. If you want it, Sarah, I think you can get it. That's what I'd do.
And at this point, what else are you going to do? It's like you got to do something.
Yeah.
Awesome. So at that point, moving forward, I had a question before. What should be getting tracked, I guess? So what should be getting measured, and how should performance be judged?
Yes. Well, let's cover that in the next episode.
Good cliffhanger.
I think we can look at metrics and what should be getting measured. How are we going to judge performance of this team? Yep, let's do that next episode.
It's Pandora's box.
Yeah, cool.
Let's catch up next episode.
Sounds good. Thanks for being here, Alex. I appreciate your help and your questions and insights.
Awesome, mate. Likewise, always learn heaps here.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Push Podcast. Please remember to subscribe, and if you are enjoying the episodes, please leave a review of the podcast on your platform of choice. It really helps to build the podcast credibility and to help others find this type of information.